While there are indeed gamers who consider themselves difficulty queens, a term I think I invented and immediately regret saying to you, there are also gamers who don't want to play games that make them feel like a big dumb dummy. I'm looking at you, the witness, and every FromSoft game ever made. If you do pop yourself into the above category, then you really wouldn't want to play these games, which duly give you the option to play on easy and then decide to make fun of you for it. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 9 video games that mock you for playing on easy. Number 9, Myth: The Fallen Lords. Back in 1997, a year when some of you weren't even born, which hurts me deep in my soul, Bungie was just a little baby company, yet to be bought by Microsoft and long before they'd be synonymous with Destiny or even Halo. They did, however, make a game called Myth: The Fallen Lords, and if you were an unskilled or casual gamer looking to play it on the easiest of its 5 difficulty settings, then Myth: The Fallen Lords would in turn call you a helpless little crybaby. Okay, so their actual sum-up word for it was timid, but I feel like the same sentiment gets across. To add insult to injury, the mode's description reads, "You will grow tired of blunting your weapons on a poorly led horde of mindless corpsemen, and the sweet taste of success will turn to ashes in your mouth." Bit harsh. It's worth noting that The Fallen Lords was considered to be extremely challenging, not just by casual gamers, but seasoned gamers as well. While GameSpot's review threw it an impressive 8.9 out of 10 back in the day, it was noted that the game was incredibly tricky even on the lowest difficulty settings. Bungie actually had to release a 1.1 patch so that at least the easiest settings were somewhat manageable. I mean, even the tutorial says you'd better follow its instructions or die horribly, so timid seems like a pretty appropriate response. Number 8, The Evil Within. While I often espouse my support of save scumming and anybody who wants to play their games on easy, because personally I reckon that game of life role playing is hard enough, there are obviously games that don't feel that way, like all the ones on this list. The Evil Within has 2 fairly defining components going for it, apart from being a sorely underrated modern horror game, and those are its level of challenge and level of spookitude. Given it's masterminded by Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami, neither of these are a surprise, but what did have players taken aback was the description of the game's easy mode. Far be it for you to decide you think you want to take this one easy, as you know you're going into it expecting a Shinji Mikami level of horror, so you'll need that extra pair of pants, and it's supposed to be a steep learning curve, but the game wasn't going to let you get away with going easy without a little bit of teasing. Your standard difficulty setting for the game is called Survival and says overcome your fears, while your only other option, in this case the easier one, is called Casual. So far so good, but then there's the description that reads, "For the weak and fearful." While enabling auto-aiming by default and giving you access to slightly more ammo, which is super nice, it does feel like we could have got the latter without the jab. Number 7, God Hand. Another Shinji Mikami venture for you here, but in the beat-em-up genre. I guess he's got something against players who would rather not embark on his intended difficulty, because God Hand slides right in as another game that has special mockery up its sleeve for players wary from the grind of higher difficulty modes. Also, let's be clear, this is another game that, if you haven't played it, players found to be difficult even on normal. If you choose the easy option on the game's opening screen, protagonist Jean will break the 4th wall and say to you, "What, you need me to hold your hand or something?" When you're done gathering your dignity back up off the floor, you'll be able to appreciate that the difficulty level meter, which controls enemy aggression and intelligence, caps out at 2 instead of 4, you take less damage, the game spawns more items, and there's a handful of other bonuses. If you do need a minute or two though to mend your relationship with the cheeky anti-hero, that's understandable. Number 6, Contra 4. If it takes more than a sarcastic remark to rock your confidence in your difficulty mode of choice, then developer WayForward put a little more effort into their attempt by deciding you weren't skilled enough to play the entire game. Falling into the same category as games like Castlevania 64, Disney's Hercules, and Golden Axe, Contra 4 is a game you simply can't complete at its easiest difficulty setting. In this case, basically you get all the way to the end and then the game literally says, "Get good or get out." If you're playing on easy, it'll be so far so good, and extra good if you've been enjoying the extra lives, credits, and upgraded power-ups, all the way up until stage 7. At this point, a prompt pops up to inform you you'll never see the ending on easy, and you'll need to choose a higher difficulty if you want to play the last 2 stages and see the ending. Even the normal difficulty was hailed by purists as a return to form for the series. as in a return to the game that many consider to be one of the hardest of all time. You'd really want to know about this ahead of time, otherwise that would be such a brutal discovery. Not that I expect anyone is picking up Contra for a breezy Sunday afternoon gaming session. Number 5, Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn. Another mockery defined by a hurtfully named easy mode, 2018 beat-em-up Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn is a game whose narrative curiously begins very similarly to that of Kung Fu Panda. That's really neither here or there as far as this list goes, but I just feel like it needs to be said. And also, I really like Kung Fu Panda. Of course, you're playing as Shaq, so there's an understanding you'll be an unstoppable powerhouse, and Shaq doesn't want you going out there and embarrassing him. While the hard mode descriptor reads may induce labor, and normal reads not quite hard, easy comes with the descriptor, dude, have some self-respect. I don't know what's worse, the sting of that burn, or my suspicion over whether that normal mode description was being matter of fact or a double entendre. I should warn you, this is not the last sports and screen icon on this list to break the fourth wall and hurt your feelings if you want to play on easy, so look forward to that. Number 4, Disco Elysium. This one's a little more nuanced in its mockery, but a little nuanced is probably the most mild way you could describe any element of Zaum's 2019 RPG Disco Elysium, so we're well within the theme. Now, in this game, you're playing as an amnesiac cop, so you really can go any which way with how you decide to design your protagonist by way of interacting with the environment and those within it. In fact, there's a whole thought cabinet feature where you can internalize new concepts, ideologies, and political learnings to formulate your view of the society in which you find yourself. Of course, it's all a bit of a trap as our weirdo protagonist takes every one of these to the extreme, but that's not the most explicit place that our game-to-player mockery takes place, though it's certainly one of the quieter indications. Now, as I said, there's a bunch of different options of how you can talk to the people you find in the game world, and you're basically let loose with all these different interpretations of how you want to convey your character and how you want other people to perceive him. And a lot of them are ludicrous or outright bizarre or offensive. But if you don't want to do that and you want to play the character like you probably would any other RPG protagonist, there are straight and narrow and reasonable responses as well. This is often the easier route, as being a lunatic can often get you in trouble or force you up against a skill check you can't beat. But best believe the game will make fun of you for it. If you pick too many responsible, lawful, or standard responses, the game will trigger the regular law official thought, which tells you, in no uncertain terms, you are boring cop. Capital B, capital C. You are boring. You have been boring. That is all. Number 3, My Summer Car. Vehicle simulation hit My Summer Car has you setting down the AK and the philosophical conundrums at the heart of a society at odds with itself to instead focus your attention on restoring a car, surviving in said car, and generally being a menace. But let it not be said that a bizarre and hilarious car game that is brutally finished in the very best of ways can't make you the laughingstock of your hopefully empty living room. My accidental jab at your living situation aside, this mockery is one that comes in the form of an achievement. You're sort of encouraged to throw yourself headlong into My Summer Car, be super confused, strangely delighted, and slowly amass a mounting number of stories about how you died that time around. But if you'd prefer to stick around, there's an option to turn off the otherwise automatically on permadeath. Should you decide to start a game with permadeath turned off, you'll pop an achievement that's called I Am Coward. And there's really not much more I can say about that one, I was there. Number 2, Wanted Weapons of Fate. Wanted Weapons of Fate is a deeply average video game based on a deeply average movie that is itself based on a cult favorite hit comic series. If you were kind of pissed off by the way that I described any of those properties because you're a fan of them, then hey, just try playing the game on easy and any amount of sledging that I just gave to it, you'll feel like it totally deserved. That's largely because there was no beating around the bush or mildness to the sledging Wanted Weapons of Fate had to throw at players who were keen to select the easy difficulty setting. You've got 3 options here: hard, which is titled The Killer, normal, which is assassin, and easy, which is described innocuously enough as suitable for users playing a shooter game for the first time, but its title is pussy. Yep. To be fair, that language is absolutely in keeping with the thematics of the source material, and that's the language that's used throughout the comic, but if you didn't know that, you would be forgiven for having a what the hell game response. Number 1, Demolition Man. This is another example of a game ready to kick you where it hurts right out the gate before you've even shot a bullet or taken a step. But this one's gonna smart more than most, if not all the other games on this list, because Rocky thinks you're a loser. That's right, none other than Sylvester Stallone is here to hurt your feelings on the difficulty settings screen for Demolition Man, the tie-in game for the movie of the same name. If you select easy, a clip of Sly plays where he says, quite plainly, "You suck." And let's remember, you haven't even started playing. While the language is a little less Sailor and a little more Sailor Moon than our last entry, given the mocking is delivered by an action box office legend in not only voice form, but full motion video, this might be a case where you'd think more than once about either putting the difficulty up or putting the game down.